G'day and welcome to the TheJadeRat. Thank you so much for tuning in. Once again, we are back with week 3 for Inktober of this year, 2021, and I just finished The Fellowship of the Ring, reading it with a friend of mine, and as such I'm feeling pretty inspired. TOLKIENKTOBER is looking pretty good. First up this week is Helm, and that is the dragon helm of Yomin. I think that's an L. But this helmet was actually created by the dwarves and is supposed to be super heavy, so it's generally not one that you would see being worn by just anyone. It becomes well known as the helmet that Chirumba, our favourite walking disaster, wears often when he goes into battle. And what I really like about this helmet is that it's got Glaurung on top. He's just like vibing up there. And the most famous illustration of this helmet is done by Alan Lee, who essentially set a lot of the visual tones and atmospheres and just general setting visually for a lot of the story. So Alan Lee also was sort of the reference point for Peter Jackson's movies, so that's sort of how that aesthetic comes about. He uses a lot of line work, ink work, and the helmet in particular has got this sort of like Celtic knot kind of motif on the side, and it has that sort of semicircular pattern across the side of the skull piece there. So that's sort of what I went with. I did try to make it a bit different, to not draw too much reference from his work, and tried to make it a bit different, particularly with the cheek protection flange thingos, adding that Celtic design further down. And as always, and I think this is the staple of Inktober actually, is using the dip pen and ink. I believe that's India ink. Dip pen and ink with a brush. So the round brushes that I mentioned in my previous video. Whoop, there's a smudge. And also occasionally the thin liner brush where needed. So there we have it. Day 15 with helmet. The dragon helm of Dorothea. I'm going to say it with an L. I think it's an L. I'm going to do it. Up next, we've got the prompt is compass, and that is taken a little bit out of its literal meaning. So compass is one that points north, therefore it's used as a navigational and guidance tool by people exploring the jungle and the seas. And my fan of my computer is going off crazy. I don't know what's going on. Well, okay. But with that meaning in mind, I picked Orome. So Orome is the Valar. I believe he's one of the major Valar. So I think there's 8 of them. One of the major Valar that is responsible for the hunt. So he's like the lord of the hunt, and he is also the lord of horses and sort of looking after horses and training them and that sort of thing. So here he is sort of cloaked in animal skin because he is a hunter, and he's got his famous spear, and he's got his bow and arrows along with his horse, and he is guiding the elves from Cuivianen, which is where they awoke. He's guiding them to Valinor, therefore acting as their compass. Next we've got Collide, and I really loved painting this one. I actually had less footage because I ran out of my SD card halfway through, but all that aside, Collide is the mental image that I got was the collision between Bull Roaratuk, so I believe his name is Bandobras, one of Pippin's ancestors, clobbing, I believe his name is Golfin Golfin, the orc. He's hitting the orc chieftain with his club during the Goblin Wars, and it actually, like, the head came off and fell down a rabbit hole, and therefore golf was invented in universe. So hobbits play golf. That's what I got out of that. Next we have got Moon. Moon is also like the celestial body, the moon, I thought of. But then I realized that in Tolkien's Legendarium, the moon is actually a flower from one of the two trees, I believe Telperion, the silver tree, and it is encased and held by Tilion, the Maya, who I believe is also under Orome, actually, and he's holding the flower there, and it gives off that silvery glow, which becomes the moon. And he is described to be quite erratic and reckless, and he sometimes strays from his path, and that's why you get the phases of the moon. One thing I hated about this one was the hands. I had a long day at work that day, so I'd come home and I'd done the sketch, and whilst I was inking it, the knuckles started looking off and the hands started looking a bit weird, and I attempted to sort of darken it up, but it still looks a bit funny. But that's the thing with Inktober, you just gotta do it and you move on. Next we've got Loop. So I was actually curious to know whether the word loop does appear in the books at all. It actually does, it appears in the Fellowship, and as I was reading it I was like, oh, I could do this with Inktober, but I already had my idea planned, which was Glaurung. Again, Glaurung is making a comeback. I don't know what's going on, but his body is described as being elongated and worm-like, so I did go for sort of like a slithery kind of loop-de-loop body, and I did try and make his face kind of look unsettling and scary, because as people who have read the Silmarillion or the Children of Hurin, they know that his eyes have got hypnotic powers, and you know, they can wipe your memory and probably do a whole bunch of other crazy things that we don't know about. But I actually really enjoyed painting the sort of spiral nature of his body, and following along with that contour of him, you know, as it rotates around. And I also decided to add texture to his body by using hatching, curved hatching, in the direction of his body spiraling, and then going in at like a roughly 30-degree offset for the places where we want to add a bit of shadow or depth to his body. You can see in the belly area I actually go through it twice, so I go through it from top right to bottom left, and then I rotate that around and then come down the other way to give that sense of depth. But yeah, that is number 19, Loop. Had a lot of fun with this one, except for his sort of chunky belly, but you know, it's Glaurung. It doesn't have to look that great. He's suspicious and shady, so yeah. Next we've got number 20. I believe this is Sprout. Prompt is Sprout, and one thing I really like about these Inktober prompts is that they force me to sort of look deeper into the world and go beyond sort of the movies, which is what is a lot of people's jumping off point into Tolkien. And this is one of them that go beyond, and they don't really show in the movies in the same way, which is the White Tree of Gondor. The White Tree of Gondor is actually the one that they show when Denethor and Pippin's whole arc in Gondor. That white tree, that's actually dead, and it does not come back to life in the books. In the movies, they sort of show it to have revived once the king returns, but in the books, that remains dead. Like, that's it. That's the third tree of Gondor, and they get the fourth tree of Gondor by Gandalf and Aragorn actually going up to a sacred mountain near the mountain range of Minas Tirith, where that mountain range is. They go up there above the snow line. It's really it's a sacred space, and it's really important to the people of Gondor, and they actually find a sapling of the white tree. So one of them had survived throughout this time, and Aragorn found it. Well, King Elisar found it, and he took it back to Gondor, planted it in the courtyard, and then it flowered in summer. And the sort of flowering of it was like the indication that Arwen can now come to Gondor, and she becomes the queen, and that's sort of like the sign. So it's the sprout, it's the growing, it's the coming of the new age. And I actually really like this one. I like trees and flowers, so I had a lot of fun with this one. I think I have a lot of fun with all of them, but some of them I like the meaning also, and sprout was one of them. Next we've got Beorn in his bear format, and we'll also see that JR botches up bear faces, but that's okay. The prompt for this one was fuzzy, and to the extent of the capacity. Am I making sense, or do I just sound crazy? Yeah, as much as my paper could hold, I put in water over the top, and then added in the ink in strokes, and let it sort of fan out to sort of give that texture of fur, and it's soft. And then after that had dried, I actually then went in with the dip pen to apply some details and give a little bit of shape to the bear itself. And I really like this. Like, if you have better paper, you could probably push this even further, but for what I needed and for the prompt of the day, that worked. And there's some little bees on the side, and there we have it. End of week 3 for Inktober. Thank you so much. I feel like I talked a lot in this one. I have a lot of ideas today. Yeah, thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you later. Bye.